Welcome to the League with your hosts, David McGee, and you might know me. My name is Benoit Tangent from the Solar Maverick podcast. Today is Saturday, November 22nd. You give us 5 minutes and we give you the latest clean energy trends. Well, I'm going to talk about three things really quickly. I'm going to talk about how the Republicans have asked Trump to restrict Chinese solar and grid parts. Also, at the border, South Korea, Hanwha Solutions, or what we know as Qcells, had their panels detained because of the U.S. Customs saying that they didn't follow Uyghur Forced Labor for Prevention Act or the UFLPA. And then the last one is the Pine Gate Renewables bankruptcy that happened actually a few weeks ago now. I can't believe time flies by. Pine Gate filed for bankruptcy on November 6, 2025 for Chapter 11. This is a large developer that had a multi-gigawatt pipeline. It had established tax equity and lending relationships, also large standing PPA partners. The bankruptcy reflects a lot of challenges that we've actually talked a lot on the league. High interest rate environments, which has happened the last 3 years, making it more difficult to develop infrastructure projects like solar, interconnection delays, EPC and equipment cost escalation, also policy uncertainty, both federal and state, and a tightening capital environment for early stage development. It's really hard to raise basically early stage capital for renewable energy projects. What you'll see that in this bankruptcy, some of the assets will be sold or acquired. Certain PPAs and interconnections may be renegotiated. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, this is just the beginning of the Pine Gate bankruptcy, and we'll see like what happens, and we'll keep you updated with, you know, the whole stage of the bankruptcy process. It's interesting. I've been, getting updates about this on a weekly basis. And obviously, we'll keep you updated with any major things that we think is noteworthy. A coalition of Republican members of Congress has formally asked President Trump to impose new restrictions on Chinese-made panels, inverters, transformers, and other grid critical equipment. This would be more aggressive tariffs or outright ban on Chinese solar equipment, limits on Chinese-made grid components, especially transformers, a trade policy designed to slow Chinese imports in order to rebuild domestic manufacturing. The challenge, though, with this is that 80% of U.S. utility scale projects rely on Chinese supply chain components. The project capex could rise 10 to 30%. They also talked about, like, obviously China's a foreign entity of concern, that there could be risks by having critical infrastructure from China. The last thing that I'm going to talk about, which I briefly mentioned, was Qcells, the U.S. manufacturing arm of Hanwha, is experiencing major production disruption at its Georgia facilities because key solar cell shipments have been detained at U.S. ports because they're saying it's from the Uyghur tribe in China that actually where they got these components. Qcells that says that's not the case. U.S. customs officials were asking, how can you prove that? How can you prove that? And obviously this goes into like traceability studies and how can you prove that this was not coming from the Uyghur tribe. Because of this, they've actually laid off people. Actually, they've laid off or furloughed around 1,000 employees at its Georgia plant. So it's impacting U.S. jobs. So that's that. It's three major things that have been happening in the industry, and I know David has a lot of interesting things to talk about too.
Benoit, thank you so much. Really appreciate sharing, that up-to-date information on what's going on in these ports, especially with Q cells and the upcoming detainees, of these panels. So thank you. I really appreciate those details.
Anytime. I look forward to hearing about these new tariffs that coming on solar panels, which I didn't
That's
know
right.
about.
Exactly. Smooth seas have never made a skilled sailor. And I think we're in a very rough terrain in the market. And this is going to really demand some evolution and innovation for us to really stay ahead. That being said, following along some of the themes that you had mentioned, US Section 232 has really been lingering specifically over, the polysilicon and the solar modules. This combined with FIAC, what we're expecting to see is module pricing increases, as high as 10 cents a watt going into next year. So just to be very specific with this, not only the components of FIAC, which we all know very much about, but Section 232 is additional tariffs that are going to be subject on solar cells, creating an increase in a very strained market already. So this is going to create a lot of changes, something we all need to pay very close attention to on how this can impact the solar market and overall with these solar cells. Next topic that we're seeing, a little bit more of a positive note, looking at Google's DeepMind, they had released the GenCast product. GenCast is a really interesting product that has some very innovative predictions, for their large language model when it comes to weather and risks of extreme weather conditions going out the next 15 days. The reason why this is so innovative is specifically of how well they're able to capture and predict weather, which is a big correlation between energy trading. So excited to see exactly how this takes place within the energy markets and how these LLMs, such as the Google DeepMinds, are going to really make our markets more efficient as we're dealing with some inefficiencies, coming from tariffs, unnecessarily on the cells, some positive, mix within this. So that's that. You just enjoyed 5 minutes of the absolute best information in the market. Stay positive. Lots of craziness going on. Hold tight. We're going to keep moving forward. God bless.
God bless. I appreciate the inspiration, and everyone have a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.